Welcome to this conversation on using ethics to upgrade coaching competencies. The way it is set up, the first thing I'm going to do is simply a couple of quick points on ethics informing coaching. So we're talking about using ethics in that way, ethics creating trust and rapport, ethics guiding thinking and doing, and then upgrading our coaching. We will move into some discussions. So we'll talk about the difference between an ICF coach and a non-ICF coach. We'll talk about using face-to-face versus audio only. We'll discuss note-taking. And then my favorite, the Code of Ethics, number 28, says we're called upon to do good, which is completely different than do no harm. And so we'll talk about that one as well. So in terms of learning objectives, what do we want out of this? We want to have that awareness. Ethics truly inform our coaching. They're there to support us creating trust and rapport, which is the #1 indicator of success in coaching. They guide our thinking and decisions, and therefore upgrade what's happening in those coaching relationships. So we're going to discuss the implications of an ICF versus a non-ICF coach, the pros and cons of face-to-face versus audio, and considerations around note-taking, and then explore the meaning and application of doing good. In terms of ethics informing coaching, they give us the parameters and boundaries for what we're doing. They talk to us about confidentiality, and to me that one's huge. Confidentiality and record keeping. So we often discuss in coaching, what does that mean? And here's what comes up for me. When you think about HIPAA, the coaching ethics are stronger than the HIPAA ethics because medical information in terms of is it protected and how is it protected? I think about, everybody in the state where I live has access to my medical records, whereas coaching notes are far more confidential than that. And so I think it's a big deal. Hi, Phil, want to welcome you. We decided we were going to have the discussion. We're going to record it and put it on YouTube for people that can't be here. So I want to check in with you. Are you good with that? You're good with that. Okay, awesome. Will ethics define our roles? And I think one of the biggest things that comes up there, I do a lot of mentor coaching, and when people are doing their recording and sending it to ICF and it gets assessed, during that assessment, one of the common fails is if the coach is stepping outside of their role. For example, if they're primarily telling or giving advice, leading the conversation, then they're not coaching. Similarly, if they're primarily focused on the past or the problem, they're doing therapy, it's not coaching. And those are considered ethical fails when they submit those recordings. So our code of ethics informs us in terms of staying true to our role as coach. The code of ethics also talks to us about conflicts of interest. And if there is a conflict of interest, how do we handle it? How do we avoid conflicts of interest in the first place? Making sure we're not setting that up. They also tell us that coaching happens only so long as it provides value to our clients, which means if we're moving through a coaching engagement and then for some reason we're noticing it isn't serving the client, they're not progressing, whatever that may be, then in terms of value, it's on us to say, you know what, is there any value to this? Is it serving them and potentially end the coaching relationship if not? They also talk to us about the quality of coaching. So a lot of coaches will barter coaching services or do sliding scale. And then the question comes up, okay, does that mean, oh, I don't have to work quite so hard, this is my pro bono client or that kind of thing? And the code of ethics says no, the quality is there regardless of what that compensation is or how it's done. So those are some of the basic things that the code of ethics speak to us about. I want to open it up for your thoughts or questions.
All sounds good.
Yeah, I think you're on mute, Phil.
Yeah, I have a question about the parameters and the boundaries. And this is based upon, I've got the book in the other room. I don't have it on my desk right now, but it's a book that was put out by a group in the UK around coaching. And they talk about that, to kind of the fuzzy line sometimes between coaching and mentoring. So if you're in a coaching situation with a client,
Struggling on understanding you clearly, Phil.
are you not hearing me?
I can hear you. It's a little bit weak and garbled.
Okay.
Oh, when you moved a certain way, it's not really good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to put in my headset and see if that's better.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, getting that. I'm very interested in hearing the question.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, turn your volume up.
Okay, hold on one second. Is that better?
It is better, yes. So
is it much better?
Oh, now we're getting there. Yeah.
Okay, good. The question I have is, if you're in an engagement with somebody that you're coaching and they're requesting specific advice and they're wanting you to be more in the role of a mentor in a part of that session and step outside of your coaching role, how do you handle that? I can after I hear you answer, I'll tell you how I've handled it, but I'm just curious how you would respond to that
question. And tell me how you handled it.
What I typically do is I will clarify, I want this session to be about what you want this to be about, and you're asking me for some advice, but I'm stepping outside of the coaching parameter and I'm now more of a mentorship role. So I just clarify in the moment that I'm stepping out of the role to a role that you're requesting me to be in.
Yeah, so I think the caveat to that, and by the way, Phil, like 10, 15 years ago, that's how we used to teach it, where you say, okay, I'm going to change hats and I'm going to move over to the coach role. And what we've learned is this: clients want to ask and they think they want you to give them the answer. And we know it just isn't as effective. The other thing we know is it's really easy to say, oh, well, let me switch hats and jump over here and be the mentor. And it takes away from the coaching and it takes away from the benefits of the coaching.
Yeah, the benefits of them coming up with the solution and coming up with the goals and making the commitment and having the buy-in and going through the process of actually doing the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Another way I talk about it, and I don't know if you've heard me say this before, I think there's a progression. So somebody starts with training, or they go to school, they do training as an adult. Then they move into having a mentor or a consultant type of scenario. Then they move to coaching.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I label coaching is advanced development for advanced results. And so to me, it's because it's that progression.
Yeah. And in the times where I've had to do that, I've wanted to bring it as quickly back to the coaching. So in order to value the client at the time, I don't just say, well, that's outside of the parameters of, you could say it nicely, but you would essentially be saying that's not what we're here for.
Well, I can say, you know what, where you're at is so common. So many people get to a place where they just want to ask and they just want to hear the answer.
Yeah.
And then in the end, what we learn is my answer isn't your answer.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about truly exploring this?
Yeah.
And then go forward that way.
Yeah, that's great. That's good advice. That came up for me about a week ago, and for a portion of a session, the client was specifically asking, what would you do? Tell me what you think would be a good approach. So I want to verbally acknowledge you're asking, and I want to, but I want to move it back to, what about you? This is about you. This is not about me. So perspective, and when I give something like that, even in response to a question, I'll typically say, what I'm doing here is providing some perspective. This is me, this is not you. So part of the perspective is what I'm sharing is out of my life experience, but this is not you. This is my experience. This is not you.
Yeah, which is the reason it doesn't have the value.
Yeah.
With exceptions. Having said that, with exceptions, there are occasionally scenarios where sharing something personal actually does benefit the client. It's not very often, and we got to be really careful with that. I'll give you an example, and I use this one a lot. I lost my son when he was 20. He was in the Army. I don't talk about that because, think about it, as soon as I do, guess what happened for you? You're like, oh no, and you're worried about me. And all of a sudden it's about me and not about you. So no, that's not what we're here for. Alternatively, if you're my client and you lose a child, and I say to you, that is an experience we shared. That's all I have to say. And now you know that I've also shared that experience. And what it does for you is it has you feeling like, okay, you get me.
Yeah.
You understand. And that's really, how else am I going to say that? I can't say, oh, I understand, because they're going to go, no, you don't. So it's very unusual that I want to draw on my past experience. It's only when it truly serves the client. When I think about perspective in a coaching conversation, it's more noticing something that's going on. For example, maybe a client comes to a session and the last 3 or 4 times we talked, the same thing came up and it was never their focus, but it kind of slipped into the conversation. When it slips in, I can say, so an observation for you, the last 4 times we've talked, this has come into the conversation. What's going on with that?
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does. That's definitely helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a on the DISC profile, I'm very, very high C.
Uh-oh.
On the Myers-Briggs, I'm an STJ. So the rules are very, very important to me. So when I see a code of ethics, it's like, oh yeah, code of ethics. We adhere to that code of ethics. That's just what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to me, it's so interesting because there's so many pieces to the code of ethics that people aren't aware of. And at the same time, most coaches come to coaching because they have a big heart and they're like, no, I take care of people. I have a heart for people. I'm an ethical person. And we don't know what we don't know. One of the examples I'll share with you, I had the privilege of a conversation yesterday. We were talking about technologies. I think we did a conversation on that one before too. And it's, okay, so if I email the client on their company email address and it's confidential information, I violated confidentiality.
Yeah.
That's something that most coaches, it's like, oh my gosh, I never knew that. I didn't think about that. And they're not bad people. They just didn't have that awareness or that thought. And so, yeah, I'm right with you. It's like, we got to go into this and we got to go into it again and again and talk about what does it mean? How do we use it?
Yeah.
I think the conflicts of interest can be an interesting piece too. As an example, I had somebody who came to me, they wanted to hire me because they wanted to start a coaching firm. And I literally said, so I'm guessing you're aware that I also have a coaching firm. We place our graduates into coaching opportunities. And they said, oh yeah, I'm totally aware of that. That's the reason I want you to be my coach. There's enough work out there for all of us. And I said, you know what? I'm good with that because I do want you to be successful. And I do think there's enough work out there for all of us. And so we had that conversation on the front end to make sure this was not going to be a conflict of interest. So, interesting. Yeah. Other thoughts or questions here?
I'm interested if Lisa has any questions or any thoughts. And I don't see people's picture other than you, Kathy.
Do you see me?
Yeah, I see you now because you're talking. So the speaker is the one who
Yeah.
you're set up to. Okay, got it.
On your panel for Zoom, let's see if you click. There's a place. I don't know if it's under more.
Oh, it's a standard view. I just changed it to the standard view, so now I can see it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yay.
And then within
Perfect.
that, you can do gallery view and you can make the size, the images bigger.
Yeah.
I do that, and then the other thing I've learned is, okay, where my camera is on my computer makes a difference as to whether or not it looks like I'm looking at you. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I move the images so I can make sure I'm on track with what's.
Yeah, I move it right. I try to move it right above the camera because my camera's a little bit lower, so it's a weird perspective anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
enough about me. Lisa, what about you? Do you have questions for the conversation?
You know, I totally get what you're saying when it comes to the clients wanting to know what we think. And, you know, sometimes it can create some frustration, I've noticed. Because if I answer the question with a question, well, what do you think? I mean, it just kind of creates more of that spiral. They don't know what they don't know. So sometimes they're looking for an idea. Like if I say, well, what kind of morning routine do you have? What are some healthy morning activities that you do to get yourself set up for their day? Some of them, I've actually had a client like she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what do you think could help you? I'm trying to get her to answer the question. And it's like, I'm banging my head against the wall. So finally, I just said, you know, something that's worked for another client is journaling. And then also yoga. I wanted to get her to think about it, you know, outside of her little box. And then she started coming up with her ideas. So I get what you're saying, Kathy. It's definitely a fine line, but sometimes I feel like I need to give them something to get their juices flowing.
Yeah. So and that's so true. Lisa, sometimes you can ask them, how do you feel about brainstorming?
Exactly. Yes.
And so you say, so one idea is journaling. What's a different idea?
Yeah, I like that.
Is yoga. What's another one? And when you do that, to me, the caveat is make sure you're going to have at least 3 ideas. Because if you only have one, it's giving advice.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
and you can't be invested in whatever the idea is. It's whatever works. You know, we don't care. No explanation. No, I want you to pick this one. It's
Totally.
Yeah.
I think another thing that can work sometimes is, you probably heard about it, the reverse brainstorm, where you say, okay, what's the dumbest, stupidest thing you could do? And that kind of breaks open the thinking. Okay, here's a really dumb, stupid idea. And then you say, okay, great. And another dumb, stupid idea is, or whatever, and you continue that. And then you move forward with, okay, no good ideas yet. What's a really mediocre idea? And then, okay, and what are some good ideas for you? And by reversing into that, you bring in humor, you break the ice, open up the thinking. And then a third thing that came to mind is, and I've done this conversation with people, I'll say something like this. I'll say, so Lisa, think about it this way. Have you ever gotten together with a friend, maybe you're having a glass of wine or whatever, and you're talking, and the friend shares with you whatever the problem or the challenge is, and you give them advice, and it's really good advice, and they tell you it's really good advice, and they're excited about it, they're going to use it, and that kind of thing, and then they don't do it. Yeah, it's the same thing. And the reason behind that is it isn't theirs. So
yeah,
one of the things we've learned is, as a coach, it can really be a disservice to just give you an answer.
Yeah.
So what are the options instead? We can do a reverse brainstorm. We can do a brainstorm. We can list the possibilities that have come up so far and talk pros and cons. We can talk about your best possible outcome, your worst possible outcome, and move you forward in other ways.
Mhm.
What do you want to do?
Mm.
And then by asking, what do you want to do? You're giving it right back to them.
Yeah. Now that gets back to the value of them doing the work, which is a comment you made to me, that they're losing out of actually going through the work and the benefit of that work. And you had sent out a couple of invites, Kathy, to do stuff with Blackburn.
Oh yeah, he does a program on the marketing or something like that.
Yeah, so he had a webinar yesterday that I attended on high value coaching engagements. And he talked about how he's wanting to see people move from, well, you just do it on an hourly basis or a session basis, to having different offerings. And he said, if somebody is paying little, they value it little. If the perceived value is high, they're going to be much more invested in it. So he was talking about that from a marketing perspective, but it's the same point. If somebody feels like they want mentoring, they're not going to get the value out of the coaching relationship. It's like, well, I don't want to be your mentor. I'm your coach. You've brought me on as a coach. So I think there's a similarity there in terms of the perceived value. If somebody's going to do the work, and if they're not going to put in the work, they're not going to get the value.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
that's a life principle, right?
There you go. There you go.
Well, maybe it's been a life principle for me. I don't know if it's a life principle for other people.
Yeah, no. Oh my gosh, way back, I used to teach classes on money for consumer credit counseling service. And what they found is if this class, and it met several times every week, was free, attendance, participation, that kind of thing was very limited. As soon as we charged $5 for it, we didn't have enough space.
So case in point, you've got a free webinar right now, and you as the presenter have 2 people, right?
Right. And it's really got me thinking about that, because one of the things we've talked about is putting together a series and having some sort of minimal subscription.
Yeah. I think that definitely would make sense, because, and the only reason I was 7 minutes late joining the call, I've been doing quite a bit with my mother who had just relocated. So I was actually in a meeting with her, setting up some things with her independent living. So they were supposed to be done by 1:30. And anyway, you don't need to hear my story, but I think that's a great idea to have a minimal amount that you would charge, something that's low, $5, $10, something like that, so that there's more buy-in.
Yeah.
If people pay, they'll be there, and they'll be taking better notes. They'll be engaged. They won't be dropping off. So I think that's worth considering.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We've worried about that because it's been a value to provide the opportunities. And I'm learning to,
Yeah.
So totally makes sense.
Because this is an extremely valuable topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important. What's interesting is ICF requires continuing ed on ethics. And a lot of times people go to renew credential, and they're scrambling. Oh my gosh, I need credit for ethics. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's important. So yeah. All right. So let me throw up this one. Ethics for trust and rapport. To me, when you say, hey, here's my code of ethics, and Lisa, even if you're not a member of ICF yet, because you're just on the journey, what you can do is say, here's ICF's code of ethics. I'm working toward membership, or I'm moving toward membership. In the meantime, I'll hold myself accountable to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously ICF can only hold members accountable. I literally asked them, I said, can other people use this code of ethics? And they said, anyone can use it. Where did you get it from? And give your membership status. That's all they want with it. And that's important. And so to me, I think it becomes a tool for us as a coach, both in marketing ourselves and in terms of creating the trust on the front end of the conversation. Because when we say, here's the code of ethics, that means something. It's, oh, wow. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then when you say, and the established standard, here's what training I've done, here's what I'm doing as a coach, I think it's the same concept.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to somebody and they say, no, I don't have any coach training, and it's definitely out there, they really know how to coach.
I think they're more consultants.
They are. Consultants or mentors or therapy without a license, advisors, those kinds of things come up. And they're well-intentioned.
Definitely.
They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, which is in part one of the reasons our code of ethics calls on us to inform people. So when they're saying, hey, I'm a coach, okay, what coach training did you do? Are you familiar with the code of ethics and what it tells us? So
I'd be interested to know, Lisa, are you a member of ICF?
No.
I'm not either. It is something that I aspire to in the future, but I want to get the practice a little more established before I do that. But the way I handle that now is every time I engage somebody for the first time when we go through that initial call, I let them know that I'm certified through Center for Coaching Certification, that their curriculum is accredited by ICF. This is the ICF Code of Ethics. So I adhere to this code of ethics. This is the code of ethics I adhere to. Give them a printed copy of the ICF Code of Ethics, their PDF off of their website. Let them have that, have opportunity for them to ask any questions about anything that's on that. But that's how I'm handling it right now.
Yeah, it's I think the balancing, because I'm an entrepreneur too, and I think for me is you go into business, what you're thinking is, okay, I got to be earning enough to pay for what I'm doing. So to pay for the next level of training, I want to earn enough from the work I'm doing. We call that the pay as you play model type of thing, and it's important. I mean, it makes sense for a lot of people. And then there's also that importance of being on that journey, moving toward that. And joining the ICF.
I think having the real world applicability though, and the practice has been huge to help me truly understand what it means to be a coach and to better my craft. I mean, you can read a book all about driving, but until you actually get behind a wheel, it's hard to really digest it.
That's a great analogy. Until that semi is right beside you, moving toward you.
Well, and the good news is, I mean, the very minute you enroll in the next level of training, the master coach class, you can join ICF, because on their questionnaire, they say, have you completed or are you enrolled in 60 hours of training? So the second you're enrolled, you can join ICF.
Yeah.
Good.
Moving toward it.
Yeah, there you go. So other thoughts on your code of ethics in terms of credibility, accountability, comfort with established standards?
I would say that the credibility is it's a key piece of establishing that credibility, especially with how rigorous that code is. It's not like, here are 10 principles. It's like, this is a rigorous code. It's well thought through. It's been reviewed. It's been revised. It's been updated for things like technology. So I think it's very important for credibility.
Yeah.
But again, I'm high C. What do you expect?
Yeah, I totally get it. What do you want to add to that, Lisa?
Yeah, I agree. When I went through the training, when we talked about ethics, I was like, oh, it's just basically going to tell me not to do anything unethical. But I remember telling Monique, I was very surprised at how thorough it was and what that really meant. It's not just be ethical. I mean, that's easy, but then it got into all of these other nuanced pieces that I hadn't even thought about. So it's intuitive, but it's also next level where you actually have to be intentional.
Yeah. There's something that surprises people.
Definitely.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So the other thing to me is they guide the thinking we do, the decisions we make. So in service to the client, I think that's a big one. I've had so many conversations with people where it's like, how do you handle this? What do you do? And that's one of the big things you ask yourself. Is this in service to the client? I love the piece on do good. Number 28, the code of ethics. That's like my favorite one. And of course, to me, both of these fall into the area of integrity, doing the right thing, whether or not anyone else knows you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the code right now.
You're gonna look at number 28, see where it says
Number
do
28.
good. Yeah. Like we all talked about the Hippocratic Oath, and it says do no harm, and ours says go beyond do no harm and proactively do good, making a difference.
And actually the second bullet point there to the first topic of conversation, in service to the client as a coach. I mean, I think that's inferred because this is the code of ethics, but the distinction that you made at the beginning of the call, I think it's important to say in service to the client as a coach.
Yeah.
Because you could, if they ask you to be a mentor, that is in their mind in service to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in service as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I like that. That's a nice
I see.
tweet. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So for upgrading coaching, here's what I think of. To me, the code of conduct, and it's so funny because how many corporations have a code of conduct? Some live them, some don't. At the same time, if we don't have that, then coaches are all over the board as far as what they're doing or how they're doing it, because we all have different ideas. So it standardizes it for us. It keeps us totally focused on the client, because when you read it, it's all about in service to the client as a coach. And then doing the right thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give you a scenario and want to hear your thoughts on this. Client engages a coach. One possibility is the coach functions without a code of ethics. They don't have any coach training. The other one is the coach is trained, and let's just go to that next level. They join the ICF and they're actually accountable to that code of ethics. So a couple of questions for you to consider. What is the difference between a coach who has training and ethics and a coach that doesn't have training or ethics? And then what are the pros and the cons of the coach profession self-regulating? So having the ICF versus government stepping in and regulating what we do. And then what do you want coaches to do as the coaching profession evolves? So those are some good questions. Where do you want to start with this conversation?
Well, I think when you have someone who doesn't have the training and someone who does, that's clear in what you're going to get. You're going to get the person who's going to offer the answers or not be willing to put the questions out there, because it's hard sometimes. I mean, there are clients that make me sweat because they're not very talkative people. And it can be so painful when you're asking a question and they just no matter how, I have one like this, and I try so hard. It's not a closed-ended question. I'm all open. I'm doing everything I was trained to do. And it's like pulling teeth. And it could be very easy if I wasn't trained to just start talking, because that's what I would rather do, is start talking and fill the space. Whereas no, I have been trained. You sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait. And that is hard. So those little nuances, I think, are definitely good and come from the training.
Yeah, that's such a great example. And I think you're in a company with a lot of people that have that same feeling that, oh my gosh. One thing that comes to mind for me is when we did the piece on understanding your client, 70% of people think silently. So they're thinking inside their head. 30% think out loud. So if somebody is a think out loud person, that's more comfortable to us because they fill that silence very quickly. The danger to it is that the first thing they say may not really be their answer. They're still finding their answer. And so if we as coach jump on that first thing they say, we're in trouble. Whereas if we just wait, let them say the next thing and the next thing, then we're serving them.
Yeah.
And if they're the ones who are thinking silently, yep, I just sit and wait and know that they're thinking. If you are not on camera like this, you're on the phone or something like that, after a couple of minutes, you're starting to wonder. At most, I may say, I think I'm hearing you think.
That's a good one.
So,
That's a really good one.
Yeah, Lisa, I was going to ask if your non-talkative clients say things like, well, that was an open-ended question. Can you ask that as a yes and no question?
Oh, and even when I say, tell me more, I mean, with those yes or no questions, I do get people who give me those one-word answers, even if it's not meant to be a one-word answer. And then I'll say, tell me more. And they're just, well, there's not much else to say, and it's like, oh, come on, it's tricky, but it's trusting the process, trusting that they're working it out. And if I hadn't been trained that way, I mean, I love, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. When I have somebody who is talking and communicating and I say, tell me more, or what else, which I learned in the training, and then they come up with something and then they say, oh my gosh, it never occurred to me, but maybe I should think of it this way.
Yep. That's the reason we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
It is the best feeling.
Yeah.
But I would have never known that had I not been trained.
Yeah. Well, and go back to the one, well, there's not much else. The question that comes to mind for me is, okay, and where do you want to sit with that? I was talking with some coaches earlier today, and one of the things we discussed is the client that's, oh, I don't know, nothing works. I wanted this for years and I can't get there, and this kind of thing. It's like
the Eeyore.
Yeah. There you go. And so then it becomes this conversation of, okay, and what's the value of staying where you're at? Somebody's stuck, there's a value in that. And what's the value of change?
Yeah.
What's going to take to change?
Kathy, for your first two bullet points there, I think to kind of combine those, you've probably had the experience multiple times where somebody says, well, I've done coaching before and it was a really bad experience, or it didn't work, or whatever. So the difference of some sort of training and complying to a code of ethics and a methodology is, if you have no training, you're developing your own methodology and you're calling it whatever you want. You can call it coaching, but it may not be coaching according to what would be good definitions of coaching. So the pros and the cons of if you've got the standard set by one organization or even if multiple organizations, if their standards are very parallel, you've got a consistent model that's being presented and a consistent standard that's being presented. So I think there's huge value in that. So what I would want to see is the statement, I tried coaching and it was worthless, eliminated and replaced with, the coaching I've done in the past has always been phenomenal. So I'm excited that we're doing this. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough because there's even articles out there, you don't need training to coach or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think those are the ones that, as you said, they're giving advice, they're mentoring, they're consulting because they don't know what coaching is. And the standard in our society for so long has been your value is when you're the go-to person, they go to you for the answer.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to call myself a coach, and I think that's where the value is being the one that has really good advice for them.
Well, I think, Kathy, I've talked to you about this before. It's very hard for people who've never gone through coaching to know what it is and to understand it. When we're talking to people, they're like, oh, you're not going to help. You're not going to tell me how to do it. You're not going to tell me the answer. And that's where I struggle, is getting people to understand that they already know the answer. I'm just going to help them figure it out, hold them accountable, and be their sounding board while they're going through the process. They struggle with, so basically I'm paying you to tell me what I already know. Yes, if you really want to boil it down, yes, that is exactly what's happening.
Well, I go back to what I like to say, it's advanced development for advanced results. So if you think about your own growth over your lifetime, you went to school, you did training, you had a mentor, you've had a consultant, and when you're ready, coaching is a very specific process. According to the ICF definition, it inspires you to maximize your own personal and professional potential. So what do I do as a coach? I'm using a very specific process that holds you as fully empowered and your own best expert.
Yeah.
And here's what we know. We know that the average return on investment in coaching is 600%. Remember when you were doing the research for that?
Yep.
And I say, the average return on investment for consulting isn't anywhere close to that.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want somebody to give you the answers, that's very inexpensive. Buy a friend a glass of wine. They will give you all the answers. That's all it takes. If you truly want to grow and be your own best self, that's what coaching does for you.
Or Kathy, maybe you could answer when somebody says, well, I'm paying you to tell me what I already know. You could say, well, you're paying me to help you act on what you already know.
Well, and I'm going to
get
say,
beyond the barriers.
I don't even tell you anything.
Yeah.
You're paying me because I'm creating a space and a process for you to discover what you have inside you and are not consciously aware of.
Yeah. I like that.
Other thoughts in response to the questions?
Well, it's kind of interesting. You asked on the second bullet point, you said, how would you feel about the government actually governing the coaching profession, setting the standards? And it's crazy to me that what somebody has to go through in order to cut your hair as a cosmetologist. and you can go to a cosmetologist who is certified by the state and get a really bad haircut.
That is true. I think also, like, look at the mental health profession. Every single state has different rules.
Yeah.
And you can be licensed in one, and if you move to another, and we're a very mobile society, your license is no good.
Yeah.
And then if you think about coaching, my clients don't live near me, right?
Yeah.
Like, my clients are all over the world.
Mhm.
And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
So I think within one organization, it's gonna have flaws. It's gonna be better than government. So in terms of the self-regulation.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we're all together on it.
Mhm.
Because if we have multiple organizations, there are going to be differences in competency standards, ethics, etc. And does that really hold us to the same standard in the profession?
Mhm.
Kathy, did you just attend the ICF event that they had recently?
Converge.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Were they emphasizing, or how were they emphasizing ethics at that event?
I got to host a coffee chat as
Okay.
the co-leader of the ethics community of practice. So with one of the other people. And the coffee chat was an early morning session. It was a live conversation like this, to have a conversation.
If you feel like you can share this from the event, since I wasn't there, and Lisa probably wasn't there either. The professional events I've always gone to in my previous career, there would be hot topics at every single annual event. What were some of the hot topics at
You're going to test my memory because I have a million conversations about this stuff.
Okay.
So, and I'll give you some resources. I actually have some slides at the end with some resources. The ethics community of practice, we have an online discussion in Basecamp, and we get some great discussions going. You know, hey, a client ghosted me, or, you know, what do I do if they prepaid 6 sessions and then they cancel and I'm not sure why they're canceling, or those kinds of things. So that comes up. I think diversity and inclusion is a hot topic right now. I think technologies and different technology platforms is a hot one. I'm racking my brain. I'll give you some resources because there are some things you can explore. Thinking, I actually am aware of time. So what I'm thinking is I want to bring up the next discussion I had for you. How does that sound?
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Move into
Yeah.
that. I think this is an interesting one. So a coach uses Zoom, just like we're doing now. They keep their cameras on. The client notices the coach's reaction to something they said, and then the client apologizes to the coach for the statement. And then the client is asking the coach about the notes they're taking. Got the scenario?
The client notices the reaction. So the client said something and the coach made a reaction, and then the client apologized for it.
Yeah.
So a nonverbal reaction.
Yeah. So if you said something, I went,
Hmm. Okay.
so here's questions. What are the pros and cons of face-to-face? What are the pros and cons of webcams? What are the pros and cons of note-taking?
Ooh, so many thoughts.
That's good. Let's go.
Well, the pros and cons of face-to-face. I mean, the pros, clearly, if somebody's feeling emotional, you can see it.
Mhm.
instead of just relying on their sound, the way their voice sounds or what have you. So I think you can really, dive in a little bit more. However, I try really hard to look at the camera. So you could see I'm not really looking at you when I'm talking because I'm trying to make it look like we're in the same room.
Exactly.
So
It gets challenging.
it does. So I'm not catching all the visual clues I should be catching.
Uh-huh.
And then note taking. So I try really hard when I'm on a call like this. If I'm with a client, I'm like this. I'm writing and you can't see me writing.
Well, then you can't catch everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do try to get the gist because that's how I retain information. And then after the call, I go right in and create my own notes. But I don't let them, they know I have a pen. I'm not going to be sneaky or stealth about it, but I'm also not going to be like this the whole time. So I'm,
Yeah.
If
So you
they-
do handwritten notes as well?
yeah, I do.
Yeah. See, I do mine on the computer.
Oh, yeah.
And then I also have little notes. So most of the time I'm looking at my computer screen for note taking. And then there's some things that I'll just jot on a piece of paper. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
I have a lot of thoughts as well. Remind me, Kathy, what's in the code of ethics around notes? Is anything in the code of ethics around
Good
notes
question. Good.
other than confidentiality?
Confidentiality is really the key,
Yeah.
which speaks to, where are they taken? How are they shared? Some coaches don't take any notes. They think it's wrong to take notes. They think the client should do that.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, I take notes because I believe that if I'm taking notes, then my client is free to do the work. I know that when I have a coach and I'm working with a coach and I'm thinking and talking and that kind of thing, if I have to stop to write something down so I don't forget it later, then I have to stop thinking and it interrupts the flow. So
Yeah.
I believe in taking notes. I believe in sharing it with the client.
You do share them.
Oh, instantly. Like literally, as I'm hanging up the call, I'm emailing them their notes.
I don't do that.
So I take notes also. I use mind mapping software.
Yeah, that's what
And
I
I've gotten really good at being able to take notes, and I'll explain if you see me looking down, it's because I'm capturing some notes. These will be available to you after the session. But the other thing I do is I ask the client if it's okay if I record the session. And in the coaching agreement, there's all the confidentiality about everything. And I make those available. I make the notes and the recording available to the client. I don't do the recording until after. What I do is for each of my clients, I have a flash drive that I give them that has all their notes and all of the recordings. But the reason I ask to record is while I'm taking notes, if I miss something, that I'm able to go back if I need to review something in the recording and say, what is it that they said? I want to make sure that I understand this correctly going into the next session.
So here's a interesting one for you. My primary style is pleaser.
You're what?
My primary style is pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
If you say to me, Kathy, is it okay if I record and I'll make this available to you? My answer will be yes. And then I'll filter myself. And then I'll end the relationship as soon as I politely can. And I won't tell you why I'm ending it. I'm just going to be extremely uncomfortable having that conversation on video or record it. And it's, that is what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's tough. One of the challenges a lot of people going for an ICF credential are having is they have to record themselves coaching. And ICF actually recognized, okay, this is really a challenge because clients are saying, no, I don't want that recorded shared with your mentor coach or ICF or that kind of thing. So what ICF literally set up is a peer exchange where coaches are coaching each other for the purpose of recording it for the purpose of getting their credential. And that way they don't have to ask clients to record. So I think that one comes up a lot. Some coaches like it, they're comfortable with it, it works, and others, it just
Interesting.
doesn't.
Yeah, and I haven't run into the situation yet where it seems like the recording is keeping somebody from being open, because it's like immediately, it's like they forgot that they're being recorded. And maybe it's, I don't know, but it hasn't been an issue yet, but that's an interesting thing to
Yeah.
consider. Because I know that for me, even like right now, knowing that this is recorded, it's like, okay, just be careful about, but for me, that's technology in general. You know, you want to be careful with any technology.
You got to be careful about it.
Yeah.
If it's a coaching session, I think there's an added burden of protecting it.
Yeah. There definitely is the burden of protecting it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the pros and cons of being on camera, I think another interesting one to me is the client is watching me. And so a lot of coaches that I talk to say, well, I really like watching the client. I want to see their body language and their expression and their gestures and those kinds of things, and it helps me. And my response to that is, how many of us have been adequately trained to really read somebody's body language or facial expression? Even just the conversation we had about cameras, am I looking this way or this way? What am I looking at?
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking, or, you know, oh, I'm giving myself an extra note down here or something like that. And it can be totally misinterpreted. So I don't know that we're actually hearing the client better by seeing them, because we're 55% of our understanding is based on the visual cues. So it's not what they say. And our understanding of the visual cues may or may not be accurate. So I think it has the potential of actually getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
I commonly, especially like my international clients where we're on Zoom, I'll come on, I'll be on camera. Hi, how are you? And then I'll say, let me get out of the way. And I turn my camera off. And then we do the coaching session. And then at the end of the session, I'll turn my camera back on and okay, it was great. You know, that kind of thing.
So the client is on and you're not.
It's their choice. I get out of the way. Most clients like to. Part of Zoom fatigue is seeing yourself on camera.
100% hate it.
Worried about what you look like and all that kind of thing. At the same time, we like being on camera because it makes it more personal. It's a catch-22.
I wonder, is it something that you should ask the client what they're more comfortable with?
Well, I think not only ask them, I also think invite them to test it out both ways. Because a lot of clients, especially initially, again, they don't know what they don't know, are going to say, no, I like being on camera. I like seeing you and having that connection. And then when they experience coaching without the camera and they realize, oh my gosh, I really opened up because I was off camera and it felt safer, or, you know, I wasn't watching your reaction or whatever. And I've heard that from people multiple times. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think it's worth playing with and seeing what really works well for them. Even to the point of, I've got a couple clients that sometimes we actually stay on camera. They're like, I really want an on-camera time. Okay, we can do that.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and I realize we've gone over on time. Let me flip through. I'm just going to skip through here. I want to throw this up.
And I do need to leave in 5 minutes because I do have another appointment I've got to get to.
Yeah, gotcha. So this is the one that's doing good. And to me, that just begs the question, what does doing good mean? And how do we want to do it? Just wondering what your thoughts are there.
Well, for me, it means in anticipation of a client call, I am 100% prepared. I am 100% in it. I'm listening intently. No distractions. I'm also willing to ask them hard questions because I'm a pleaser too, Kathy. And so I don't like people to be uncomfortable. I really don't. It's like, I want to make you feel good and congratulate you on all the great things you're doing, which that's the easy part. The hard part is calling somebody out on something that I think they could work on, because that could create, a feeling of defensiveness or discomfort. And I don't like that, but I have to get more comfortable because it's for the greater good of this person's growth.
Yeah. It's when you hear something and okay, there's something else going on there now.
Right.
Yes.
Pushing, even if it's uncomfortable for both of us.
Yes. Yeah. And what are you thinking, Phil?
Well, doing good is obviously wanting to have the client come up with the solutions, have the client make the commitments. The accountability is a reminder of the commitment, but not, any sort of a judgmental way of saying you didn't keep your commitment. But okay, so where are we going from here? What do you want to do? What do you want to focus on now? What's this about? I'm going to move the Zoom panels over. I think another part of the doing good relates to what Lisa said about the hard questions, asking the hard questions. It's also things like not being uncomfortable with silence. And if you're doing a Zoom call and you're on video, silence can be particularly, more uncomfortable for people.
Mm-hmm.
But also people are very used to Zoom now, and maybe they're moving beyond some of the things of, well, I guess I'll just always look bad on Zoom, so I might as well just look bad and it's okay.
It's what it is, right? Yeah.
It is what it is. I can't do anything about that.
That's too funny. Well, and so now, an invitation to both of you, take it beyond the client and think about doing good in terms of our code of ethics calls on us to promote ethics and standards in coaching and tell people about them who don't know, inform others. And then if I go even further, ICF's got a huge effort in terms of social justice going on and calling on coaches to proactively do good in terms of social justice. So it's absolutely with the client, and it goes beyond. Phil, I promised a couple of resources, so let me bring those up to let you know. And part of me doing this here is so then later you can open up the recording on YouTube and screenshot it or whatever you want to do. So ICF has a code of ethics video series. Obviously, you can access the ethics. In addition to that, you've got the ethics interpretive statements, which explain in further detail what's meant by the code of ethics. In addition to that, they have an ethics CCE course that people can take. An FAQ page. There's an ethics hotline where people can call and say, okay, here's what's coming up. How do I deal with that? And then there is a process where if somebody files a complaint, they do an investigation. The community of practice for code of ethics, the ethics community of practice, we do quarterly webinars. You can get into the online discussion in Basecamp. And then there's also water cooler discussion. Once a month, it's just a very small group of people get in and talk about whatever hot topics are coming up. So that can be very interesting too. And then I will just say thank you. I'm so glad you two were here and willing to engage in the conversation and have this discussion. I think it's a value add for a lot of other people too, because we'll put it on YouTube. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being here. So
that was great.
all.
Thank you so much.
Great
Very,
conversation.
very
Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Are you going to share the slide deck with us?